On Mountain News this morning, a teacher who was shot by a 6-year-old student in her classroom was in court. And flight reductions at the nation's 40 busiest airports take effect, sparking new frustrations for passengers.
Dedicated to Eastern and Southern Kentucky, this is WYMT Mountain News this morning.
Good morning, Mountain family. I'm Amelia Lee here with you on this November 7th at 6 o'clock this morning, and time for a check of our weather with meteorologist Alexa Minton. Alexa, what's going on today and this weekend?
We have got a first alert weather day today because of a couple reasons, and it's going to last all the way through our Monday. Now, today we are starting off with, of course, an active rounds of storms coming in the second half of your forecast. It eventually is going to shift into snowflake chances by our Monday forecast. So those strong storms are rolling in the second half of our day. We stay calm for our Saturday, but by the time we're talking towards our Sunday night into Monday, we're looking at flake chances for our region, and it feels like the teens on Monday. So today, one thing we're noticing, those temperatures not too bad. Don't be fooled by the 70s you're going to see in the upper 60s. It feels good for the first half of the day when you step outside, but as those thunderstorms roll towards your skies, things are going to pack a punch. Again, second half of the day is when we're going to expect that activity. I'll walk you through your full forecast and tell you a little bit more about those incoming storms in just a few more moments.
Thanks, Alexa. A jury in Virginia awarded $10 million yesterday to a teacher who was shot by a 6-year-old student in her classroom. Abby Werner sued former assistant principal Ebony Parker in a civil case, accusing her of failing to act despite several warnings that the first grader may have had a gun. The defense called the January 2023 shooting an unprecedented, unforeseeable tragedy.
I remember just 3 years ago, almost to this date, hearing for the first time Abby's story and thinking that this could have been prevented. So now to hear from a jury of her peers that they agree that this tragedy could have been prevented. So we're very happy with the outcome for today, and we're happy that Abby's story got to be told.
Werner required multiple surgeries and a bullet remains lodged in her chest. She had sought $40 million. Parker now faces another trial next month in a criminal case on charges of felony child neglect. The death toll from the Louisville, Kentucky UPS cargo plane crash has risen to 13. Today, new questions about what might have led up to the crash, with federal government records showing the plane had recently undergone maintenance. In a statement, GE Aerospace, the company behind the plane's engines, said safety is our first priority and we're supporting the NTSB's investigation.
We will look at every piece of maintenance that was done.
There's so much charred, mangled metal that not all of the bodies may have been located until you look underneath certain things.
For those living in the impact zone, tests showed no significant health hazards in the air, shrinking the shelter-in-place order to just a quarter mile. The NTSB says there's no reason to take any immediate safety actions against other planes of this type that are currently in service. Well, some folks are stepping up to help people they don't know in the wake of the tragedy. A pilot in the southern Indiana area learned just how quickly people were willing to give. Sydney Martin's Fund Drive has already raised hundreds of dollars for first responders and air traffic controllers. She says many air traffic controllers and first responders are running on little food and sleep.
Yeah, I mean, it's already such a high stress job for them. So it's unfortunate that on top of, keeping everybody safe, it's such a high stress job, they're also not getting paid to do so.
Martin's initial goal was to raise more than $1,000. That ended up changing to $4,000, with more than half of that already being met. The UPS cargo plane crash in Louisville, it's drawing comparisons to one of the deadliest air disasters in U.S. history. WYMT's Caroline Mueller spoke with an aviation expert at Eastern Kentucky University about these similarities and why he says events like this are extremely rare.
The UPS cargo plane that went down near Louisville's airport is being called a descendant of the DC-10 that crashed in 1979. American Airlines Flight 191. Dr. Tim Holt, chair of the School of Aviation at EKU, says the comparison is fair.
Anytime an engine like that completely severs from the wing, then you're looking at possible hydraulic line, and at least in this event, there were hydraulic line damage that severed the lines, froze the control surfaces, which left less aerodynamic lift in the left wing.
The NTSB says investigators are already analyzing every piece of wreckage, including both black box recorders.
We feel comfortable once we get these to our lab in DC that we will be able to get a good readout of the applicable data, and that will be yet another point of information that will really help us understand what happened during this point of flight.
Holt says the 1979 crash led to stronger safety standards, and those practices are still in place today.
Based off of management practices, following consistent standardized practices of manufacturers, those changes really were amplified and took it to a different level.
Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says early indications point to a mechanical issue.
This was not an air traffic control issue. It appears that it was a mechanical issue. Everyone's been clear on that. That is not speculation.
And while the investigation could take a year or more, Holt says the aviation industry's safety culture remains strong.
Events like this are rare because of the oversight of maintenance and the sign-offs and who's qualified to do maintenance and how they're qualified and the rigorous training they go through.
Caroline Mueller, WYMT Mountain News.
The NTSB is still investigating. They say their job now is not only to learn what happened, but why, and make sure lessons from this crash improve safety moving forward. The federal government shutdown has reached its 38th day. Senators resumed talks yesterday, which are aimed at resolving the shutdown. Senate Majority Leader John Thune says Republicans are waiting to hear from Democrats regarding a GOP proposal to end the stalemate. One Democrat says reversing some of the Trump administration's mass firings of federal employees has been discussed. Many Kentuckians are looking at ways to fight hunger after the uncertainty surrounding SNAP benefits. During Wednesday's Deep Kentucky briefing, Governor Andy Beshear announced that the National Guard would assist in staffing food banks as needed. Beshear joined 24 other states as well as the District of Columbia in challenging the Trump administration regarding the decision to suspend SNAP.
Let me be clear. The president has both the funding and the authority to fund SNAP during a shutdown. In fact, every other president in every other shutdown has done so.
During the briefing, the governor also recognized Martha Lane Collins. The former governor died last week at 88 and is the only woman governor Kentucky has had so far. Today, flight reductions at the nation's 40 busiest airports take effect, sparking new frustration for passengers. The move is due to air traffic control shortages brought on by the longest federal government shutdown in U.S. history. There's some optimism on Capitol Hill that a key procedural vote on a funding bill could be a path towards reopening the government.
I'm kind of making contingency plans to drive the whole way if I need to.
They're worried about putting gas in their car. They're worried about putting food on the table. As that risk increases, you have to begin reducing the capacity of the system.
There is some evidence that many travelers are choosing to hit the road as airlines reduce flights over the next few days. Car rental company Hertz says its one-way rental reservations have spiked more than 20% through this weekend. The shutdown is also straining resources at airports. TSA and air traffic controllers continue to work without pay during the shutdown and last week missed their full paychecks. Lexington priest Father Jim Schicko tried to help airport workers at Blue Grass Airport yesterday by delivering breakfast and lunch. Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announced that she's not seeking re-election for another term in Congress. It would end her nearly 4 decades in Washington. The 85-year-old Congresswoman expressed gratitude and pride for her years representing her constituents in San Francisco. Pelosi was first elected to Congress in 1987. 20 years later, she made history when she became the first ever female House Speaker. She remains the only woman to have held that position.
We have got a first alert weather day today because of a couple reasons, and it's going to last all the way through our Monday. Now, today we are starting off with, of course, an active rounds of storms coming in the second half of your forecast. It eventually is going to shift into snowflake chances by our Monday forecast. So those strong storms are rolling in the second half of our day. We stay calm for our Saturday, but by the time we're talking towards our Sunday night into Monday, we're looking at flake chances for our region, and it feels like the teens on Monday. So today, one thing we're noticing, those temperatures not too bad. Don't be fooled by the 70s you're going to see in the upper 60s. It feels good for the first half of the day when you step outside, but as those thunderstorms roll towards your skies, things are going to pack a punch. Again, second half of the day is when we're going to expect that activity. I'll walk you through your full forecast and tell you a little bit more about those incoming storms in just a few more moments.
Thanks, Alexa, and thank you for getting your day started with us on Mountain News this morning at 6:10. Are debt collectors bothering you to the point of harassment? We'll share how you can determine if a collector is following the rules or crossing the line.